So after lunch, we are continuing to share resources for you and your students. Our next speaker is Heidi Diedrich, the Executive Director of Artworks Projects for Human Rights, a post she assumed in July 2016 after working in human rights in the Middle East for nearly 5 years. She brings a diverse background in international development and photography, complementing more than 2 decades of leadership experience in nonprofit communications. From 2011 to 2016, Diedrich was based in Iraq and served in leadership roles with international non-governmental organizations focused on international development, emergency humanitarian response, and advocacy. Diedrich was also director of Metrography, the first Iraqi photo agency, where she led efforts to operationalize the agency and established a nonprofit training center focused on cultivating an independent Iraqi media and ethical human rights reporting in the Middle East. Diedrich has held various other leadership roles with U.S. nonprofit and for-profit organizations since beginning her professional career as a photojournalist. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, where she studied photography, journalism, and communications. Please welcome her.
Thank you very much. Let's see. It's really wonderful to be here and share the story of Artworks Projects for Human Rights, which is based here in Chicago, but it's an international nonprofit organization. I am particularly pleased to be here because I come from a family of educators. My mother was an art teacher in public school for 30 years, and my sister and her husband are both elementary school principals in Illinois. And so you have both an advocate and an admirer of all the work that you do. I know that I could not do it. So thank you very much for the work that you do. I really am also excited to introduce Artworks Projects to you as a overarching organization that uses art and design to address human rights abuses globally. We are international in scope, but have a really strong footprint in Chicago and a commitment to the city of Chicago. We do a lot of programming both at our studio in River North, where we have an art gallery plus studio space for holding community conversations, but we also do a lot of outreach with the Chicago Public Schools, the Chicago Public Libraries, and then events around the city. This is an image that I wanted to show you because it really goes back to when Artworks began. We entered our, I forget it's November, we entered our 10th anniversary season this fall after starting in 2006 with a concept that we would use documentary photography and documentary film in large projections in prominent public spaces around the world to show people what human rights abuses are occurring. Artworks Projects identifies human rights issues that often are not getting a lot of attention. They might not receive much media attention, or if they do, it's sort of a flash in the pan and the world moves on. It also covers issues that often lack the political will to address those issues, both internationally as well as in nations around the world. This was one of our first exhibits, was shown in Paris. We've shown our work on six continents, still thinking about how to do something on the 7th, but in many cities and countries around the world. Before I go further, I thought that I could show you a video of our organization and our 10th anniversary that will give you a bit of a snapshot of the work we do and where we've shown our work. very excited to be entering our 10th anniversary season, doing tremendous work both in the United States as well as internationally to help educate people and raise awareness about the issues that affect us all.
As a refugee, it really touched my heart when I heard the story and also seeing the picture. I really feel appreciated that they are being treated like normal human beings.
Our building is full of future voters, future leaders, future decision makers, and any kind of access we can give them to their global neighbors, I think is always a good thing, and the images are great for that.
The students have been able to see how artists can use the knowledge of the visual arts and convey a message. I want the students to continue to have these conversations and to see images and to get them thinking about how art can have a power.
It truly falls upon us as individuals and as global citizens to demand change so that we can put an end to human rights abuses around the world. And so, well, it's a little promotional in nature. I thought that I could show you this video in part to show you that while we're a global organization, we're a tremendous resource here in Chicago. And we truly are committed to continuing the work that we're doing in Chicago, both covering human rights abuses, as well as partnering with educators and schools and youth groups in the summer to bring youth into human rights advocacy through art and design. In this video, we had 2 Chicago public school teachers talking about Workshop to Change the World, which I will speak about in a moment because that's our program that is in Chicago public schools. But I wanted to just really first talk about why we're using design and the arts to advocate for human rights. We really believe that it's important to know statistics and how many people are displaced in the world, and know about issues from a more academic perspective. But we also truly believe that we have to put a face on those who are survivors and victims of human rights abuses. We really believe that through the arts, and we use primarily documentary film and photography, that we can connect people to a common purpose, and that it reinforces a shared sense of humanity. We also believe it connects people to issues that they otherwise would be disconnected from. So oftentimes, if you're not fully aware of or have some kind of a personal connection to a human rights issue, you might feel that it's just happening over there, when indeed many human rights abuses are happening right here in our own backyard. As the introduction stated, I just returned from doing human rights work in Iraq for 5 years. And one of the issues I worked on in Iraq was torture. And we were anti-torture, obviously. But we were working on helping Iraq fulfill their obligation under the UN Convention Against Torture, which they signed. At the same time that I was working on that project and preparing a report for release to the government of Iraq and the Kurdistan region government, the very next day, the day before I presented the report, the Senate committee report in the United States came out on torture. And so it really brought home to me two things. One was that I was doing really important work in the Middle East, but there was a lot of important work to do at home. And the second was that I would try to pursue work with an organization that tells the story of human rights issues from a perspective that's a little more personal, and that allows me to continue this work in bridging human rights issues in the United States to those in other parts of the world. Because at the end of the day, human rights truly are a global issue. They are borderless. And that if we can approach it from a perspective of the global citizen and the responsibility we have, we can then hopefully make some progress. And from our perspective, engaging youth in this is critical, because human rights as a concept is a fairly new point of discussion in this world, only several decades old in terms of the legal ramifications related to human rights abuses in relation to it being a formal discipline. And so there are a lot of us, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. There are a lot of us doing this work and making progress, but we really believe that it's the next generation of youth who are said to have more of a foundation in social justice and understanding human rights issues, that they can take the work that we've done and really make some positive change. We also believe that our approach humanizes issues and provides an accessible platform for educating people about human rights. We also believe that the way that we're approaching it you saw 270 partners in the last 10 years, with partners around the world, that we're really making it possible to be educated and understand about an issue and then inspire people to action. And that action can be volunteering, it can be changing careers, which I did to go into human rights work. It can be writing a senator or a representative. It can be marching in the streets. Our goal is to put that information out there to help people understand through images and through film the stories of people who both are victims of human rights abuses as well as those who work to protect them, and then make a decision on if and how you want to be engaged and be active. Most importantly, perhaps, is that through using documentary film and documentary photography, we're able to give a voice to those who otherwise might not be heard, in particular because we're covering human rights issues that are often not covered. We also are working closely with those who work to protect survivors of human rights abuses around the world to tell the story of the complexities of addressing human rights. There are many different layers of how you go about supporting victims of human rights abuses, from legal to mental health services to providing safe passage for the individual who's the victim of a human rights to get to safety. And then, of course, it really hopefully reinforces that human rights are global, borderless, and that we all, as global citizens, have a responsibility but also have a role in how governments and how communities address human rights abuses. One thing I wanted to mention was that our model, even in the United States, even though we're a Chicago-based organization, our model is the same around the world in terms of how we approach a project. And we teach this also through our workshop To Change the World to youth so that they can understand how to ensure that a perspective on an issue is, should be inclusive, and that we all come to issues with various points of view. And so it's important to engage and include people from the communities that you are addressing human rights issues about. So what we do is we identify a human rights issue that we would like to pursue as a project. We connect with local organizations that are working on those issues, and then we identify local artists, local photographers, and filmmakers. So we did that here in the United States. We worked with a US photographer on this project, Transitions, and then we worked with a panel of experts on transitional justice, which is what this exhibit is about. This exhibit is actually about transitional justice in 4 countries, in Colombia, Bosnia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the United States. Moving forward, we'll continue to approach it from a global perspective, including the United States when we can. Again, reinforcing that human rights issues aren't just happening in other parts of the world, but they are also happening here in the United States. I thought, again, I think watching a video about how this exhibit came about would do it much more justice than me up here as a talking head. So let me.
Transitions is an exhibition, and it's also a process. We've come together in 4 different countries to discuss our post-conflict transitional justice journey. Some of us are 150 years into the transitional justice process, and some of us are really trying to get to a post-conflict scenario.
Having this workshop has opened our minds to different countries who have gone either to a transition or has gone through a peaceful process. Hearing the experiences from Bosnia, from Congo, and the US, there are some underlying themes that overlap with us. And it's in South America, but it's so close to an American audience. Sometimes people forget the things that we've gone through.
We're part of this international team. We're really proud of it, and this has been a very important experience for us because it's not usual to have like this kind of opportunities to share stories about conflict.
It will be a window, local people talking about themselves. At the same time, an occasion to bring all these different experiences around the world, put it together and exchange the best practice from each country. So I think it's a wonderful idea.
For us at ULA Africa, there's a particular benefit in bringing our work into international contexts. We're very interested in sharing with global audiences the realities that are taking place in Congo and creating invitations and possibilities for people who are concerned about this to get involved in ways that are positive, that are empowering, that have to do with mutual exchange.
Had the opportunity to take a part in telling the story of Bosnia's transition after this recent genocide. We wanted to take an approach trying to show the process that is still ongoing.
This was a big experience for me to meet people from other countries, to hear their problems in their country, how they try to solve it. I can use their experience in my storytelling.
One of the things that we've learned through this workshop in Chicago, you can build solidarity by opening up this exchange and making it an international topic. It allows more people to freely engage, perhaps with less intimidation and a bit more interest and curiosity.
A lot of the work that I've provided focuses on race relations in America. I think it's really important to understand historically why we are in the same situation that we were in years ago and understand that journey we've had. When we understand how systematic oppression has affected different groups, that's when we realize what needs to be done now. So I want people walking away from this with the desire to work together. That's when we'll really see changes.
We would like people to come to the exhibition or access it online and to feel that there are tools out there for justice. And hopefully this all comes together to give this very dynamic vision of what transitional justice is and why it matters to the individuals that live in a society.
So the reason I wanted you to have a sort of a sense of our approach in terms of how we put together projects, but these are also a couple of images from the actual exhibit. The approach that we take in pulling together a project and collaborating with people to identify a human rights issue and then how we're going to, as a team, illustrate it, if you will, is also the model that we use in our outreach with youth engagement in the Chicago Public Schools. This is from Bosnia, the International Committee on Missing Persons. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's related to enforced disappearances, which is when people disappear at the hands of a government or a government, at the hands of the government or a government actor. And so, although the conflict ended years ago, the results of that war continue to live on. This is a displaced family in Colombia. As we all know, the Colombia peace process, peace agreement was not approved. And so this family has been displaced because of the militia fighting. This is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a young woman who now has access to education. The government in 2010 passed a law that primary education would be free. And so it opened up opportunity for millions of students. And this is a tobacco farmer in North Carolina in the United States. In the United States, we looked at property and land rights as part of the transitional justice issue. And transitional justice, in basically layman's terms, is when a government tries to redress or make right past human rights abuses. And so it can be through legislative changes, it can be through reparations, it can be through a myriad of ways, including acknowledging that those human rights abuses happened. That actually is one of the first steps toward moving forward and providing transitional justice is governments actually admitting and being accountable to the past human rights abuses that they've been engaged in. Which then now leads me to the youth engagement part of what we do. I wanted to give you the framing of the organization, again, to understand that our approach is collaborative, that a lot of work and workshopping goes into how we identify issues under an umbrella human rights topics such as transitional justice, and how we bring in educators, artists, community activists, government actors to look at the issue from a variety of angles to ensure that the way that we are approaching it as best as possible honors the victims of those human rights abuses, honors the government, or I'm sorry, the country in which those abuses occurred. I'm sorry you can't see it very well, but one thing that we will be doing, as mentioned in my introduction, I've just assumed responsibility for this organization in July after the founder, Leslie Thomas, stepped down after 10 years. She's still on our board of directors, but shepherding in a new era for the organization, one that will continue the work in Chicago while continuing to build our footprint internationally. In Iraq, I did a lot of work with youth, in particular with adolescents, who is somewhat of a forgotten population there. There is a lot of programming around children up to about the age of 10 or 11, or there was pre-ISIS. A lot of the funding that's available now is going directly to addressing the issue of ISIS in Iraq and emergency humanitarian response. But almost 50% of the population of Iraq is under the age of 24 years old. And so youth is something that I'm incredibly passionate about and care deeply about for reasons I've already stated, including the fact that I think they really offer us the best hope for long-term change. They can influence, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but they can influence and make change. And we really do need to engage them and bring them into discussion about social justice and human rights. I really think it's quite important that we are very thoughtful and deliberate about how we engage youth, but that we do bring them into the discussion because they have opinions and they have ideas and they have thoughts about what they want to happen in their communities and in the world and in Chicago and in the United States. At the same time, we really have to be thoughtful about how we work with them in this age of everybody being a documentarian, everybody having a smartphone, everybody being able to capture a moment and share it broadly without really necessarily thinking about how that might impact both the person that's the subject of the video or photo or impact the issue more broadly. So through our work with youth, we teach them to tap into their own creative talents to illustrate ways in which they can talk about issues, but we also reinforce to them that with that comes great responsibility. And so I don't have to tell you all or most people that technology has changed the way people get their information and share their information. And our goal is to help youth and all people, but youth in particular through our workshop to change the world, understand how they can do that in a thoughtful and a responsible way. We also really believe that our model is powerful in showing that images and technology can be used in a thoughtful way to shape human rights dialogue. UNHCR is shifting actually a little bit their strategy away from just reporting numbers and images of people washing up on the shores of Greece and other parts of Europe and fleeing the war in Syria and other parts of the world, to trying to do more with illustrating and showing the actual human face of the displacement that's happening globally right now. So we really do believe that we can use images and then technology, because we can disperse the information globally, to shape human rights dialogue and hopefully help educate people to understand a different side of the story. We also realize that we have to really balance the sense of entitlement to photograph everything with the ethical responsibility of sharing it. And so we've seen, in particular in the last couple of years in the United States, examples of this where violence against African Americans has been caught on tape, police brutality, and then an uprising. And so being conscious of where information that we gather is shared and how it's used or misused. And really intersecting between arts and design and human rights so that youth can walk away with concrete ways of understanding how it can be a powerful medium for them to be able to share their perspective. As I mentioned, we are in an image-driven world, and where, and I think, you know, I was thinking about this the title, which a millennial gave me in my office. I was thinking about the title, and actually, when we think about issues that we really care about, and issues that have either moved us to anger or tears or joy, or maybe they made us laugh, we often do think of it in an image. So if you think about something in the history of time that's really affected you, we often think about it in a still image first. And so theoretically, I think we've always been visual people that think about life and think about experiences through images. The difference now is that we're able to share it in a flash and not really even oftentimes think about it. We take the picture, we share it, and then do we stop and think, oh, should I have shared that? In particular with youth, 71% of teens, according to Pew research, are on more than one social networking site, and middle and upper income teens are leaning toward Instagram and Snapchat. Snapchat is, as you know, a snapshot of information like that. So how can we get them to use this technology to, in a way that's thoughtful and respectful when talking about issues such as human rights? We also know that they're using social media in ways that possibly couldn't have been imagined years ago. Another study from Pew found that people are really feeling that social media helps them get involved with issues they care about, and that it brings new voices to the political conversation. This was a study that was done this summer, specifically related to the current presidential election. But really we've seen, and this is not earth-shattering, but we've really seen a seismic shift in how people are getting their information. There's so much information out there. How do we make sure that that information is ethical or is accurate and being ethically presented? And so with us, while we're an arts organization that advocates for human rights through photography and documentary film, we take very seriously the issue of ethics and the issue of human rights related to reporting on human rights. So what is the right of the victim, if you will, or the right of the survivor of that human rights abuse, and how are we portraying those issues? These are conversations that we have with youth when we do our programming. Workshop to Change the World is one, Next Gen Committee is another, and Emerging Lens. Workshop to Change the World is a really wonderful program that we've started 6 years ago, and again, it's in the Chicago Public Schools. When the program was started, we tried to forge a partnership with the administration of CPS, but have to date been unsuccessful in doing so. And so what we've done now is just partner with, now what we've done is partner with individual Chicago public schools, often organically through contacts that we have or through friends who have children in different schools. This is my plea that if you're in the Chicago public schools and would like to bring our programming to your school, we would love to. And it is a really cool, powerful, remarkable, amazing program. I am, as I said, passionate about youth, and I'm passionate about photography, and I'm passionate about human rights. So this is one of my favorite projects. We've done the programming for more than 600 schools in 6 years. I'm currently working on trying to get the program itself a pool of funding so that we have sustainability. It costs you nothing. All of our programs are actually free. With Artworks projects, that's part of our mission and part of our commitment to bringing human rights issues to the masses, if you will. We are able to do programming with students from 3rd grade to 12th grade. And I have some pictures here, but I will tell you a little bit about, can you see those okay, hopefully? Workshop to Change the World brings into the classroom for a day or a series of workshops split up over a couple hours or however the school and the teacher wants to do it. We are flexible. We design a program that will work in that classroom. We bring artists into the school with us. We often start with a foundational issue that Artworks Projects has covered in the past and talk about art and the power of the visual arts and visual media in addressing human rights issues or social justice issues. We also talk about what is social justice. We make sure the issues are benign. We don't bring in a lot of some issues that might be a little upsetting to a younger population. But we also don't sugarcoat some of the issues. So it's important, we think, to bring into the dialogue what kind of issues are occurring both in Chicago and around the world. We then have the students break up into small groups, or if they want to work individually, again, it's driven by the model that the educators want and that the students will respond to. They then work to identify an issue in their neighborhood or community that they would like to illustrate or share their perspective and their opinion through art. Then we workshop, and they go about developing a project. You can see some of the students, I think you can see a mentor up here. It could be a painting, it could be a sketch, it could be a screenplay for a film, it could be poetry, it could be a musical piece, it could be photography. It can really be whatever that student wants or the group of student wants to illustrate the issue. Not surprisingly, especially over the last few years, gun violence has been a big one. I'm trying to think, I think I have, yeah. Gun violence has been a big issue in Chicago. The point of the workshop is to have the students identify what they want to talk about and share their perspective on, and they develop a project around that. We then, you can see up here, we then usually exhibit the work either in the school at a minimum, but also at our studio at 625 North Kingsbury Street in Chicago. So we want to be able to show the students that they can use their talents and interests in a myriad of artistic disciplines to talk about issues that they otherwise might not feel comfortable bringing up, or that they might be thinking about but haven't really found a way to just talk about. And then we have the artists work with them and mentor them about how you can go about addressing human rights issues, social justice issues through art, and then we exhibit it. So I think it's a pretty cool program. We've had wonderful responses. You saw in the first video the 2 public school teachers who have done the program many times. Another project that we have, and I am almost done, I promise, but another project that we have is Next Gen. And so this might be, the age might be a little older than the folks you work with, but it is a youth engagement strategy for us. 35 is not youth, 30 is not youth, but it is a strategy that we use to bring younger people into the discussion of human rights advocacy and the work that we do. We did a survey with people in this age, around this age range in Chicago, and the findings told us that this age group wants to be involved, but they don't have money to donate. And they're tired of being asked to donate money, and they want to find another way to be meaningfully engaged that isn't just coming to stuff envelopes or folders for an event or work a registration table, but how can they actually have a say in what kinds of issues are introduced in the public discourse. And so we started the Next Gen Committee. So we actually tap into them in many ways. One is to do events, to bring in a younger group of people into our organization and to our events and to the kind of work that we do. Another is to tell us or counsel us, give input, give perspective on how we can continue to grow our youth engagement strategy for younger people, building on Workshop to Change the World, but looking at other program ideas. And then they also give us project concepts. And so we are seeking feedback from this Next Gen Committee about issues that are affecting their generation or their age group, both in the United States and globally, and how we might plan. It takes about 18 months, obviously, to plan a project, but how we might put those projects into the pipeline so that we can make sure that we're getting perspective from a younger population. And then finally, Emerging Lens. Emerging Lens is also one project that is very near and dear to my heart. It is a juried photo competition for emerging photojournalists aged 27 and under. We've done 2 Emerging Lens competitions, and we will be launching, hopefully, our 3rd. I'm seeking funding for that too, but hopefully launching our 3rd in December. I had a video, but I think I'm going to skip that because the sound is pretty bad. This Emerging Lens recipient winner, Emmanuel, he did a documentary photo story on the 43 disappeared students from the teacher college in Mexico. We just closed this exhibit this summer, but I'm hoping to tour it. Including, he's very, very brave. He would like to tour it in Mexico. I think we're negotiating that because of his security. But Emmanuel lives in Guerrero State, which is where the Teachers College is. He did a remarkable photo essay that looked at the families of the disappeared. The 43 students still have not been found. There was an investigation by the Inter-American Council. They were asked to leave Mexico because they found that it looked as if the police and possibly the mayor was involved in the disappearance. The UN has not investigated it because the UN has to be invited into the country to do the investigation. So for Emmanuel, who was one of dozens of applicants for the Emerging Lens competition in 2015, he felt that this story was critical to keep putting pressure on the government, to tell the story of the victims through the family's lens. And so he looked at, the entire exhibit is in black and white, he looked at the altars, trying to find a way to illustrate victims without being so obvious, such as taking a picture of a portrait. This is also a massive altar of all the victims that disappeared. And then he is going around the country and photographing the protests as well. So this is an example that we also would share with our students when we're working with them, to talk to them about the different way you can cover an issue that maybe has received a lot of coverage in the media, or cover an issue from a different perspective, such as the family story, rather than just talking about the victim. Emmanuel continues to do this work in Mexico, taking great risk, but really was able to get a lot of mentoring from a couple of professional photographers that we work with, including a photo editor of a national publication in the United States, as well as us. So they apply for the competition. The winner then has mentoring from us to choose a topic that they want to cover, and then we mentor them throughout the entire process, and then it culminates in an exhibit in June. And so we will launch this in December, and the age cap is 27, but we're looking for photographers younger than 27 as well. And so you can find more information out about that if you know anybody that would want to be in this competition on our website. And finally, we do community engagement. 625 at 625 is a community conversation at our 625 studio. This fall, it's all around transitional justice. In the spring, it will be around sanctuary sustenance, which is the story, the refugee journey story from home to displacement to resettlement. We have a program with the Chicago Public Libraries for the first time this year, again, focused on transitional justice in the fall and refugees in the summer, or in the spring, and then we do a myriad of community events throughout the year. And so I wanted to end just with this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, because I think it really captures what we're trying to do in terms of taking global human rights issues and localizing them. And I know you can all read it, but I'll read it as well. Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In a small place close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, the farm, or office where he works. And so through our work, what we're trying to do is really embody that quote. We identify the issues that others often are overlooking, including governments and international actors. And we try to bring it to the community level, to get the community engaged in understanding human rights issues, and then being advocates to try to hold the government accountable to stop those abuses. And we really want to, really want to engage more youth. I really would love to be in every Chicago public school. It's going to be a model that we are intending to take to Europe next year, and then through the Middle East and Asia and Africa in 2018. And so thank you for indulging me. I hope that you can see that this is a great resource in Chicago, and we would be really willing, able, happy to work with all of you. We also accept student groups coming into our studio. We have a beautiful work classroom space, so we can come to you or you can come to us. So thank you very much.